Welcome back to a new kind of podcast I'm trying out. This is called the Racing Life Podcast. So basically what it is, it's kind of taking through, drivers, crew chiefs, media members kind of thing, and just kind of telling like how they got to where they are. It's kind of fun. Just thought of that. I'm Casey Campbell. And to kick it all off, I welcomed in Howie Disavino. Of course, many of you know him as he's been driving some truck races for Jordan Anderson the last few weeks. Howie, how are you, bud?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing good. I don't want to start off with how it all started because that's boring. So take me like to I think we all know how it's weird how people get into this stuff, but like take me back to like the first time you race something.
So the first time I ever really raced something, I was at a later age than what most people started racing at. It was, as you know, I grew up on a farm. I've always driven four wheelers, dirt bikes and all that type of stuff. And eventually, told my dad, I said, "Hey, let's go to Richmond Raceway. I just want to watch the race." My he wasn't the biggest racing fan in the world, and all that type of stuff. And I saw these little miniature cars, and I was like, "Oh, I want to race one of those." And it took me 4 years later, and at the age of 13, that's when I really started racing. So to jump into a race car, and I was in the B main, I was in the slow group, but I finished second in my first race. So it was one of those things where, I thought that, it'd be easy to win and stuff like that, but you learn really quickly, it's a lot harder than what a lot of people think. So that's kind of like my first race and how I got into it.
Yeah. So after that, I think what did you get into? Just, different types of cars, like how like go-karts, bandoleros and all that?
No, I went straight from arena racing, which is basically just a mini cup, and went straight from that to late model stock cars, from late model stock cars straight to ARCA, and I raced a few pro late model races for War Racing Development.
Yeah.
And then right after that, I'm now in trucks. So, like I said, there's some kids that have been racing longer than what I have. I've only been racing for 7 short years, and we're able to accomplish as much as we have in that short of time.
Okay, so let's kind of go back because let's go back to when you started racing late model stocks. How did that opportunity really kind of come up?
So it was one of those opportunities to where I was racing and arena racing. This dude that was racing in as well, he had two late models, and he was like, "Hey, I like what I see. Let's let's try to test them in a late model, and y'all could just pay me to run races." So I've never driven a stick shift at this point in time, and I was like, "Oh man, this is a big card. This is my, I'm able to be starting racing late models." I mean, I started so many times and all sorts of stuff, but he really just a big shout out to Brad Davis because I wouldn't be where I'm at if he didn't take a chance to put me in his late model and let me prove what I had.
And how long were you in late models?
I was in late models for about 3 years.
Yeah. What's some of like the best moments of like driving in late models?
So I mean, when I started out in late models, it was more of I was in decent equipment. It wasn't like my car wouldn't go to the front. I could hit maybe a top 10 with it. And then the next year we bought our own car and it was, it was top five worthy. And that's the year that I got into a lot of wrecks because I was just still learning how to drive a late model and all that type of stuff. And we built a brand new race car and we got like 6 poles. We never won a race, but we had 7 consecutive second places in a row. And we finished off that season second in points by I think we were 2 points off from the leader who had 5 wins. So we had a really consistent year with that one year, and it's crazy how you jump into equipment, and it's even in the NASCAR world. You jump into decent equipment, you will do good. You can still showcase your talent. But when you really get into that good equipment, you really thrive.
Yeah. So late models, you drove from, I think you started 2016 through 18 when you were driving those, or still now?
I was 14 years old, 20 now, so I think it was 2015
2015.
when I started.
Okay, I was a year off. So, and favorite, I know you kind of talked about, some of those best moments. What did you learn from that, like, experience of driving these late models?
It's a whole lot different when you go from such a small car to these big cars. You really like when you're going into the corner, you got to learn how to hit someone, but not like overly aggressive to where you go through bumper bars. And the guys are just so aggressive, and it's just something like if you get moved, you better fight for that position back, or you're gonna get there's gonna be a train on the inside and you're just on the outside struggling, right? So you really learn how to play defense and offense in late models, and that's what I think really built me as a driver because I grew up at a short, very very short track. Unfortunately, they shut down this past year, but it was one of those tracks to where you're full throttle and then you're hard on the brakes, and it was kind of like a Bowman Gray stadium in a way. We're bumping into each other, wrecking each other, and it just really goes to show you how aggressive you really can be without being like, a jerk about it.
Yeah. So fast forward to ARCA. I think that started in 2019, 2018. It was either one of those 2 years because I do remember when you.
Yeah, it was 2018.
2018.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So you ran it with, I think it was a second Wintron car, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. That's actually a crazy story on how that happened.
Yeah,
I
okay. So how did it happen? Because I do remember when
Yeah.
when you made your debut. So how did that all come about?
So Austin said, "Hey, I really want you to test out an ARCA car." And so I was like, "All right, let's my dad and I we drove down to North Carolina from Virginia, and I got fitted from an ARCA car. And next thing you know, I'm just sitting like I'm sitting in an ARCA car. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And we show up at Hickory, and I didn't know this, but everyone else knew it that test was going to determine if I go to Elko or not in 4 weeks. So I'm like, oh man, I'm just going to have fun around here, just testing our car. I didn't think anything about it. And Jamie Jones, my crew chief at the time, he was like, in 5 minutes, I'll tell you if he's ready or not. I fire up the race car. I'm just learning how to drive our car. They're so much heavier and everything. They have so much more horsepower. And I ran some pretty fast times. And Jamie looked at my dad and Austin. He put a thumbs up. So like 4 hour test goes by, and Austin pulled me in the trailer, and Kevin Sawinski is sitting in there, Jamie Jones, my whole family. And so I come in, I'm like, oh man, did I mess something up? Like, what happened? And they were like, hey, how would you feel about racing Elko in 4 weeks? And so in my head, I was thinking, I'm like, 4 weeks is pretty, it's not out there. It's like it'll come up quick, So I just, I was like, all right, let's do it. And my mom was over here crying, and it was a really surreal moment that they didn't want to put the pressure on me for it, because if I knew going in that this was going to determine if I'm ready for the ARCA series or not, I probably would have choked,
Yeah.
And so I was out there having fun. Next thing you know, I'm 4 weeks later, I'm racing the Elko. So that was an awesome experience to be able to have.
So, of course, the Austin you're referring to is Austin Terrio.
Correct.
So, for of course 2017 ARCA Menard Series champion, someone that's helped you out in your career. So
tremendously.
Yeah. And so when you get to Elko that day, I'm trying to think of, how old were you at the time? Were you 18, 17?
I was 18.
You were 18. So you were 18 years old. You got to Elko. What was some of the nerves going into that race? Because there's a lot of drivers that were in that race that are running trucks right now, like Zane Smith, Chase Purdy, Riley.
Yeah, it was one of those things to where I showed up, and I was like, man, this is awesome. Then I did my walk around the track, and I was like, this is a small track. Like, I was like, this is a really small track. And I think the car field that day was 27 cars.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, like this is gonna be crazy. So first practice goes out. I'm trying to get the car slowed down. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a wreck and go on the wall, and just cuts. And the horsepower there is so crazy because you'll go, if you just mat it and you're down the backstretch, you'll spin tires all the way down. So you have to learn that good throttle control. And it was just one of those things where I was nervous, and I went out to qualify. I qualified, I believe, 13th, and out of 27 cars. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. We definitely have a good car. And the year previous to that, Gus Dean won in that car at Elko. So I already knew that we had a good car and all that type of stuff. We go into turn one, and when the green flag drops and everything, I was like, I'm gonna drive it like a late model. I'm behind, I think it was Michael Self, I believe.
Yeah.
And I floored it just like I would a late model, and I felt the car just step out a little bit. I said, yep, can't do that. So it was a really big learning experience, honestly, to just know how far you can push it. And the hard part about that race was we ran 110 laps straight without a caution.
Yeah.
And so that's like the most laps I've ever ran consecutively in a row without a caution. We come in, we change tires, get fuel, we go back out, and next thing you know, we finished the race on the lead lap, and we finished 10th. I was like, wow, we have our first top 10 on the lead lap. That's pretty awesome.
I think that was 2019, because 2018, that's when Gus Dean won. So that was, I think, 2019.
You know what? You're right. The years just kind of merge on me,
Because I knew it was, because you said 2018, and then you said Gus Dean won, and I'm like, that's not 2018. That's 2018.
Yes, you're right, because I ran Daytona this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. You're right. 2019. Because I was 18 years old. Yes, and I grew up and I was born in 2001. So yes, it was 2019.
Yeah. So, kind of going into that, I keep forgetting. Did you run any more races in 19? Did you run any more, or?
Yes, I ran Lucas Oil.
Okay. So,
that track was tough. Yeah. We had a tough break there.
Yeah. So going into that after 2019, what's kind of like the biggest thing you learned really through that?
I learned a lot more about control when it comes to the bigger cars, how you can kind of push them. And the hard part is, like with a late model stock car, we don't have those interliners in the, and it's a whole different feel. So in a late model, I could tell you what it's doing just by diving into the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And these, I told Jamie so many times, he was like, so what's the car doing? I'm like, I don't know. I really just do not know. Like, I feel like I have no front end geometry. I just don't, I don't know. So going into 2020, when I ran Phoenix and, Iowa, all those great tracks, I was like, man, now I started to pick up on what was going on. And I really learned a lot about about ARCA cars in 2020.
Okay, so let's go into last year. There was also, I think you ran a handful of ARCA races last year. Plus it was just a really strange year overall to just get to run these races and stuff. Did you ever feel like when you went to the track, like I think it was Iowa or any of the other races? I don't think Phoenix really before that.
But Phoenix was 2 weeks into the whole COVID stuff, but we didn't have to wear any mask or anything like that. The week after, we got shut down.
Yes. Oh, that's right. That's right. So after the shutdown and everybody came back and raced, how, for that, like for you, how weird was it for you to go to like racetracks and like, this is just weird?
It was one of those things to where, you really can't go out and talk to anyone. You just have to stay in your hauler. You have to wear a mask everywhere, and it was just like it was one of those things where we're so much back to normal now than what we were, to where we can walk around the racetrack without a mask on. Everything's just so much different, right?
Mhm.
My first race back, I was like, man, I'm glad I'm at a racetrack, but we had like a 4 month period to where we couldn't run.
Mhm.
It was crazy. It was all online stuff. It
Mhm.
was on iRacing, and I was like, wow, like this is really crazy that I'm finally back at a racetrack. And then my first thing I thought, I was like, well, I hope I didn't lose any driving skills because we've all been off for 3 to 4 months. We're all a little rusty. We haven't really been able to get behind a car, and we ran pretty good. And that year just overall was just strange,
Yeah.
really strange. Even going into Daytona in 2021, this year, we had to wear masks and all that, and we had to social distance. But that felt a little bit more normal because everything was a little bit more relaxed. It wasn't as hard.
Right.
And then for my first truck race, we had to wear masks, and then the second one, I didn't have to. So now, leaving Texas, everything just felt so much back to normal.
Right.
And then Pocono really just felt back to normal.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those deals, where like 2020 was just such a weird year.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad that we're able to go to the racetrack. We're allowed to have fans. Honestly, perform like racing in front of no one is the weirdest feeling in the world because you're so used to people screaming like, "Oh my gosh," like and stuff like that. Richmond, we were able to have fans, and Texas, and it's actually good to hear the fans like when they say your name on the intercom, like, and they actually cheer for you. It's such an awesome moment,
Yeah.
and we missed that for 2020 a lot.
So going back to last year, I mean, like, how did you like talk to, with, the crew stuff and everything that happened? Because I don't know how many, trying to remember. I know you ran a handful of races after the break. Like, I know you ran Iowa. Trying to remember if you ran any more.
Lucas Oil.
Yeah.
I ran Phoenix for the second time.
Yeah.
There's one other track. So I'm telling you, man, everything merges in, and like because I think I ran like 5 races that year,
Yeah.
but everything was so scattered out.
So what was the biggest thing that you had to adjust to during that time last year? It's like, was it just staying away from people and making sure that you're doing everything right that you had to do? What was it?
Honestly, for me, I'm the type of guy that I've always just stayed at my house. I don't, I go out a lot. I do, but like I'm not a quote unquote like social person. I don't just go out just to go out, and it's more of you know, I like to just be home to where I know I'm safe and all that. Plus, I had plenty of stuff to do around the farm. So for me, it was just more, I stayed away from people. I just did what I had to do. If I walked into a store and they told me to put on a mask, I'll put on a mask, but it's just one of those things to where, I think that everyone kind of did their own part in a way.
Yeah. And me going on checking racing reference. Those you just named the three races that you ran: the Phoenix race, the Iowa race, and the race at Lucas Oil plus the West race. So you actually got the races that you ran last year pretty good.
Oh, good.
So um, let's fast forward to the Daytona test a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of going into that, what was that like, knowing that we're in Daytona, we're getting ready for the season? It still feels weird because we're wearing things over. You're still wearing something on your face, but what was it like to race that track for the first time?
At the test, it was more like when I showed up, I was a little nervous because, everyone knows you just hold it wide open, right?
Mhm.
But when you actually go down that back stretch and you look into turn three, you come right off turn two, it looks about that big. And you're like, there is no way this car is going to stick. And so it was just one of those deals to where I told my crew chief, Jamie Jones, I said, I promise you I'll hold it wide open the first lap. And he was like, no, no, you won't. Like I know you'll lift. And I was like, okay, all right. I went out there, my that pedal did not come up one single time. I was running my out lap, I was against the wall. And when I come in, um, the first thing I said to Jamie, I was like, hey, go ahead and check the Elmore computer and tell me if I lifted. And he looked at it and he was like, yep, you didn't lift it. I said, I know. I said, trust me, I know. But it's such a weird, that track right there, if you've never been on super speedway, it's weird. The air's pushing you around the car. You're holding, like you're holding the steering wheel still, and you feel your car to side to side, side to side, and then you're like, what's going on, right? Then we get to drafting, and my car was darty, like it was all over, right? And so Ty Gibbs came into my trailer. He was behind me. He said, hey, man, just try locking your arms a little bit so that it doesn't move as much. Of course, he has a little bit more experience when it comes to drafting. And this is my first experience in drafting, right? And I was lucky enough to go out in a fast group with, Brett Holmes, Ty Gibbs, and I think it was just us three that were in that draft. And so I tried it, and I could hold it a lot more straight. And it's just crazy how you can hear the engine when you're by yourself. It's just kind of going like that. But as soon as you get into that draft, you just hear the RPMs go up. It's the coolest thing in the world. It really is. So that track is just a all around great track to run on.
Made your ARCA, debut at Daytona this year. The test is one thing. The race is a completely different thing.
Different beast. It's 100% different.
What were some
going in?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So going into that race, were you nervous at all?
I really didn't want to pile it up on the back stretch. So I mean, I was a little bit, because I already know, I'm like, yeah, this one's gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt. And it kind of sucked because our qualifying efforts were awful. We started 25th. And I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Now I'm like, I know we have a fast car. Like, I just know we do because, at the Daytona test, by single car runs, we were 8th. So I knew we had a fast car. The race goes on, and I think Thad Moffitt and someone else got into a wreck on the front stretch. I'm right behind this dude, and literally when someone's in front of you, all you see is their car. You don't see nothing else. And so he checks up, I hit him, right? So I have a little bit of nose damage. I'm like, all right, you know what? I can't lead a race with this because then it's just drag. So restart comes up, and next thing you know, another caution comes out. We're sitting 8th. I went from 25th to 8th. Under caution, my left rear went down, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Come in the pits, we swap out the left rear. Now I have to start 27th. So I'm all the way in the back again, and I work my way up again. And next thing you know, there was another caution came out, and it was going to be a green, white, checkered. So I was like, all right, I guess it's the time for me to be aggressive, like really aggressive.
Yeah.
I think I'm like 15th at this point in time. When I tell you, like, I've never been so aggressive on a restart, it was crazy. There was some dude in front of me, and as soon as I saw the leaders take off, I took off. I am pushing this dude down the whole front stretch. I'm shifting on his bumper. And we go down the back stretch. I get some big runs. I'm hitting him. I'm just straight, just hitting him. And I was like, all right, don't cause a wreck, Howie, because it could result very bad. But with me pushing him, he pushed the guy in front of him, and we picked up 2 spots, and we finished 13th. So coming to the checker, there was 2 cars behind me, but they were in the other lane. So I kind of blocked him a little bit, went up and then back down, and so we finished 13th. 13th. And after I got out the race car, I looked at Jamie. I was like, well, last year only 6 cars finished this race, and this year 20 something did. So that's good.
That's pretty good.
So
yeah. So after that, you make your first truck debut, but something big happened between that. I'm not sure when this happened, but when did you first move to Charlotte?
I moved to Charlotte at the end of March. I think it was March 22nd.
Okay.
And I just talked to Austin about it, Austin Terrio. And I said, if I'm going to be in the racing culture, and like if I'm going to be running for these teams, I really need to move down there. Yeah. He was like, yeah, man, that's great. And I was like, he was like, so what's your timeline? Like, what like, when do you think that you're going to be down here? I said, I give it 2 weeks like that. And then he was like, hey, I thought you meant like a few months, like a few months. And I was like, no, I already made my decision. I'm going to move down here. And 2 weeks later, I had all my stuff in my truck and I came on down here. And everything's working out for me. I'm able to go to the race shops. I'm able to work on my own stuff. Mm-hmm. Do the summer shootout stuff with Joe Ryan race cars and all that type of stuff. So yeah, I've actually been doing pretty good down here. And then finally, I was able to actually work on my Richmond truck too. So, there's a lot of benefit for me moving down here.
Was it tough leaving home?
Oh, I mean, it's always tough because,
yeah,
your parents, you rely on them a lot, mm-hmm. and you got to learn how to not rely on them and grow up basically, like you just got to straight up grow up. Mm-hmm. And, I couldn't be the immature kid that I was, 5 months ago. I couldn't be him no more. I had to, grow up and realize what I have and how to make things happen better. So a lot of maturity comes from moving out and living on your own. And it's a big step, I kind of feel like, I was that little bird that got booted out of its nest and I could finally fly,
But I know it was tough leaving home, but I know there was also a lot going on at home. Everything's good that went on is going on with your mom.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest part about it was I took care of my mom for 3 years, with her going through cancer. She's still going through it.
Yeah.
And it was one of those deals to where, when I was taking care of her, I would wake up and go to the gym at 4:25 in the morning and be home for when she wakes up so I can make her breakfast or whatever needed to happen. And so that's the hard part about that, because all my other siblings, both my sisters were moved out. And eventually one of my siblings came back to the house, and she's living there now and she's able to take care of mom. So it was kind of refreshing for me to just kind of leave and just, realize that, my mom's, she's in good hands. Right. And, but it was definitely tough leaving her. She promised me that she wouldn't cry when I left, but of course she cried. So it was just one of those deals to where, it was time for me to move and she wanted me to pursue my career, not, constantly worry about her. So, I talk to her about every day. So, it's just one of those deals where, I still go up there and visit her and stuff like that.
Of course. And technically you're not really living alone.
I am not. No, I have a roommate. His name's Chris Knight. Many people know him. Yeah, I'm renting out a room at his place, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's good. So fast forward to you made your truck debut at Richmond.
Okay.
At So how did that like all come together?
Honestly, Austin just made it happen. I'm telling you, man, he's my saving grace. He's made everything just happen for me. He's the one who got me hooked up with the ARCA stuff. He got me hooked up in the truck stuff. And it's just one of those deals to where honestly, I don't know what I'll do without him. I would probably be still racing late models right now if it wasn't for him. So he made it all happen, and I just came down here and started working on it, and we ran Richmond. We had a lot of issues at Richmond. Power steering went out with 50 to go. Our radio harness messed up early in the race, so we still finished the race. That's all that matters to me. But yet again, we got a second shot at Texas, and that race couldn't have gone better for us. We started last, and we finished, I believe, 23rd there. So we started, I think it was like 37th, and we finished 23rd. Fast forward to Pocono, that was a crazy race as it was. I had radio issues at the beginning of that race, but I got caught up after that first caution, and we were all good after that. I started 39th there, finished 22nd. We had top 20 speed all day. It's just we got so strung out that I wasn't able to catch them in those last two laps. So, the truck stuff's really starting to come around for us, especially with us starting in the back so much. We're really making really good gains going forward. So I'm very happy with it.
So you talk about making your truck start in your first career truck start at your home track in Richmond, which is probably a huge deal for you. And then you get another opportunity at Texas, you get another opportunity at Pocono, and you have all these, and plus you're also on the pit crew at some races.
Yeah, so it's definitely like I said, it's just so much different because now that I'm down here, I can go to the races, I can travel with the team, I can do all sorts of stuff now. And it's pretty awesome to see the behind the scenes, and I can't stress this to drivers as much as I can. Seriously, when you're not racing one weekend, just help your team out, and you would be so much more appreciative of what they do behind the scenes because you don't realize how much work goes into it. And I think a lot of drivers take that for granted because, for me, I'm just out there having fun, but they don't understand how stressful it is. The pit stops is stressful, making the calls on top of the pit box is stressful. So it's just one of those deals to where I really think that it's healthy for most drivers to go work on the pit crew one weekend that they're not racing and just see what it's about and interact with your team a little more. And it goes a long way. Like it really does go a long way with your team owner and stuff like that. So I would probably tell every driver to go do that.
So you and I were talking before we did this is what's kind of next? Do you have any other plans for remaining races? I know you got some things in the works. I know you can't talk about just yet, but kind of go into what people could expect for your plans the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think that we got a few more truck races on the list, and I think that we're just going to stay in trucks for right now. Learn as much as possible about these trucks as we can. I don't want to make too many jumps so soon. Like I said, I'm only 3 truck races in, and we're doing really good. So I would expect a few more truck races. Do I know exactly where? As of right now, I do not. But if I have any announcements, I'll be for sure to text you and let you know so that you can share the news.
Yeah, of course.
So it's definitely it's going to be an interesting year for us. We got a lot more racing to do, and I'm really excited about it.
Of course, man. Well, first off, thanks for coming on, and and thanks for kind of telling your story. It's not a lot of people know about you, so it's kind of kind of good to let people know where you are, who you came from, and that's what got me doing this. So it's fun stuff. But anyway, thanks, Howie, and we'll see you at your next truck race, whenever that will be.
Thank you for having me on, Casey. And it was, it's always great talking to you, man. And can't wait till next time.